A curious bear cub, drawn by a strange smell, ventured too close to the edge of an old peat bog, and the peaceful morning was instantly shattered. The viscous, deep peat slurry immediately began to close around its small paws. A piercing, terrified cry shot through the tiger. In an instant, a huge brown she-bear and a majestic male bear were at the rim of the man-made pit. The she-bear roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated fear, her claws tearing uselessly at the soft, crumbling edges. The male bear, normally the picture of power, circled frantically, his massive paws only causing small, unstable chunks of earth to crumble down onto the struggling cub. They quickly realized their immense strength was utterly useless. Any attempt to reach their cub only threatened to send them plummeting into the deadly slurry as well. The cub's cries grew weaker, smothered by the cold, heavy mud that was now threatening to consume its entire head. The realization of the trap's deadly nature brought the she-bear to a point of paralyzing despair. But their panic was about to morph into something even more profound, a desperate, unimaginable gamble that would test the very limits of trust between predator and man. Ranger Ivan Belov was deep into his routine patrol, checking salt licks and noting animal tracks, when he was suddenly confronted by two immense, agitated predators. He brought his UAZ Bukanka van to a slow, cautious stop, his heart rate spiking. The she-bear and male bear stood directly in his path, their mouths open. But the ensuing roars carried anguish, not aggression. It was a bizarre, unnatural tableau. Ivan immediately recognized the danger. Two adult bears, highly stressed, were a lethal force. Yet, as he watched their movements, he realized their posture wasn't defensive or territorial. It was imploring. They began pacing, agitated, and roaring. But their focus wasn't on him. It was a restless, kinetic fear. The she-bear would take a few quick steps toward Ivan's van, then spin around and run a short distance away, looking back repeatedly. The male bear stood his ground, letting out deep, frustrated growls that seemed directed at his plight more than at Ivan. Ivan, relying on his years of experience reading animal behavior, was trying to compute the unbelievable message. He knew the sheer danger of two agitated bears inches from his vehicle. A step too close, a moment of misunderstanding, and he was prey. Yet, as he looked at the sheer terror in the male bear's eyes, the raw, naked desperation of a parent, a gut feeling told him this was different. He saw the frantic, non-threatening nature of their appeal, realizing they were actively trying to communicate. They were overcoming their predatory instincts and the innate generational fear of humans to appeal to him. This necessity had stripped away all conventional rules of engagement, forcing a pure, raw communication of urgent need. They were begging him to follow. But what if the bears were just baiting him? What if this was a coordinated, cunning lure to draw him into an ambush? The tension was almost unbearable as he sat there, torn between the professional risk and the unmistakable plea of the parents. This unexpected challenge tested his courage more than any aggressive standoff ever had. The agonizing slowness of his decision was necessary, but every second felt like a betrayal of the cub he hadn't even seen yet. He had to choose to trust them. He carefully started the engine again, keeping his movements slow and predictable, and began to follow the parents. With a deep breath and a silent prayer, Ivan followed their desperate lead, unaware of the terrifying, sucking sight that awaited him at the bottom of a simple, man-made trap. The trail was short, but fraught with peril. The she-bear and male bear led Ivan directly to the edge of a newly dug hole, perhaps an old peat excavation or settling pit, filled with thick, rain-soaked mud. Ivan instantly saw the grim reality. The exhausted cub was deep in the pit, barely keeping its head above the muddy slurry. Its cries were now weak, raspy gurgles. Time, Ivan knew, was running out. He immediately retrieved a wide wooden plank from his vehicle, a critical piece of equipment used for crossing soft ground, and used it to create a stable, temporary bridge over the slick, unstable earth. The plan was simple, but required surgical precision. He had to distribute his weight to prevent sinking, secure a hold on the cub, and pull it against the tremendous hydrostatic pressure of the mud. This mud wasn't quicksand, but its density and viscosity meant it would quickly suck the life and strength out of any creature trapped within it, stressing the cub's small body far beyond its capacity. This was the factual danger driving the narrative. The science of the trap was as deadly as any predator. The she-bear and male bear stood directly at the pit's edge, their bodies coiled in protective readiness. Their roars had now shifted, turning into a mixture of fear, impatience, and protective aggression directed at the pit, but not at Ivan. He could feel the heat of their breath, smell the wild scent of their anxiety. This was the methodical, tension-building core of the rescue. Ivan's focus was on the precise placement of the plank, his low stance, his every movement a meditation on control. The emotional perspective was the sustained, high-tension watch from the parents, who were held back only by the faint hope that Ivan represented. The plank creaked precariously under Ivan's weight, and he realized he was still a foot short of safely reaching the cub. He knew the mud was too deep to stand in. He had to execute a lean and grab maneuver that put 90% of his body weight over the unstable edge. He was exposed, vulnerable, and the smallest miscalculation meant disaster for them both. Could the small cub hold on just a few seconds longer? The tension was compounded by the terrifying thought, what if the plank snapped under the pressure? He pushed that fear aside, focusing on the small, whimpering cub. He knew he couldn't wait another moment. The cub was slipping again. The time for strategy was over. It was time for the riskiest, most vulnerable reach of his life, a move that depended entirely on the continued, fragile trust of two wild hearts. Ivan committed to the final, desperate act. He knelt on the far end of the plank, leaning far over the pit's edge, his arms outstretched toward the terrified, failing cub. He could feel the suction of the mud pulling at the air itself. The sight was the terrifying visual climax. The ranger, exposed and vulnerable, reaching toward the struggling young life, while the powerful she-bear and male bear roared loudly, just feet behind him, their massive forms filling his periphery. He managed to secure a grip on the cub's scruff. The effort required to pull it free was immense. The thick, cold mud resisted with a malevolent, powerful suction. He strained against the earth, his muscles screaming under the pressure, pulling the small, slick, exhausted body against the tremendous force. The parent bear's roars intensified, their impatience and fear boiling over, but they remained rooted in place, held captive by their trust in this stranger. Finally, with a loud, sucking sound, the cub was pulled free. Ivan quickly retreated onto the solid ground, placing the small, shivering cub just out of his immediate reach. The immediate danger was over, but the climax of the emotional drama was yet to come. The cub lay still for a moment, then gasped, a raspy cough escaping its chest as it drew a clean breath. The fear in Ivan's heart was immediately replaced by immense, flooding relief. Now he braced for the pattern interruption, the moment when the bear's protective instincts would supersede their gratitude. The expected reaction was aggression, or a possessive snarl to reclaim their young. Ivan slowly backed away, hands open, waiting for the inevitable charge. But the twist was powerful. The two large predators, seeing their cub safe, did not lunge at him. Instead, the she-bear let out a soft, low sound that was not a roar of aggression, but a sigh of overwhelming relief. She rushed forward and nudged the cub gently, checking for injury, her focus entirely on her young. The male bear stood over them, his guttural breathing now slowing, the tension visibly draining from his massive shoulders. They momentarily ignored Ivan, a silent, powerful acknowledgement of his service that defied their very nature. Ivan realized he had just witnessed a raw expression of gratitude and relief that transcended the food chain. With the small cub safe and reunited with his parents, the immediate drama was over. But the most profound part of the entire encounter, the silent lesson learned, was just beginning. The cub lay safely on the grass, slick with mud, weak but alive. The she-bear immediately began the meticulous work of restoration, covering the cub with warm, vigorous licks, her tongue clearing the thick mud from its fur. The cub nestled into her, secured by the familiar warmth and comforting scent of its mother. Ivan sat back on the edge of the embankment, exhausted, his skin streaked with mud, allowing the family the privacy of this intimate, powerful moment. He observed the scene from a safe distance, recognizing that he was a temporary agent of fate, his role now complete. This moment was not about strength, but about trust and empathy. The she-bear and male bear had made a choice that defied millions of years of predatory instinct. They chose hope and survival through an enemy. Ivan's willingness to risk everything and the bear's astonishing willingness to trust him created a necessary moment of cross-species cooperation. This emotional payoff reinforced the idea that a parent's love and the need to survive are universal forces that transcend the food chain. The core message was clear. Empathy is the most powerful survival tool. Finally, the she-bear finished her cleaning, nudging the cub to its feet. It staggered, but it stood. Before guiding their cub gently away, the she-bear turned back and looked directly at Ivan. She held his gaze for a long, quiet moment, her amber eyes conveying an undeniable, powerful recognition. The male bear stood beside her, his head held high, before they both turned and melted back into the tall grass, their two massive forms moving side by side, shadowing their precious young one. The emotional payoff was complete, a fragile life saved, and an unspoken bond forged in a moment of desperation. Ivan remained breathless, knowing this profound memory would be the most defining moment of his career.